Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Amelia and today we have a pretty exciting video actually. We are finally going to be reading the fourth and final secret project. This is The Sunlit Man by Sanderson. And if you ordered like the Dragonsteel edition, this has been out for a while. But if you have the normal Wish edition like this one, then you might only be receiving it. Mine came from Indigo and they only recently were released. So even though technically this book came out a while ago, I'm saying it's a newer release and we're going to read and review it here like we did with the other three, which is very exciting. So my plan for today is, it's apparently supposed to be like 18 degrees, which for March 5th in this country is extremely toasty. So I'm desperate to go outside. So I'm gonna go to the shed, dig out my lounge chairs, and then we're going to sit outside and get started reading this. I think I'm also going to set up an annotation key for it, do some annotating. I've been on a bit of an annotation kick recently. I read Going Postal and Empire of Dirt. Those are the last two books I read, and I annotated both of them and really enjoyed it. And I also think it's very helpful for when I'm filming this type of video because then I can easily go back and find things that I want to mention in my review portion. But yeah, let me just quickly show you the book. So we have really a beautiful cover design, the spine, and then the back is just like Sanderson's note like the other ones have been. And then if I take off the dust jacket, it's just a plain hardback, which I think is honestly a bit of a missed opportunity because we could have had this sunbeam just like motif on here, and I think it would have looked really good. But of course, this edition is supposed to be, I guess, the more affordable one. If you want a fancy, expensive one, you have to order his. But yeah, I just think an emblem on here could have been amazing. Side, it's nice. And then on the cover, or the end pages, we have artwork, which is really nice. I really like this piece. I'm not as big of a fan of this piece, just because this sword, I don't like the sort of like oversized weapon aesthetic. And also when you look at it, it looks like the sword's glowing, but it's not casting any light on the man. So it doesn't look like he's actually holding it. It looks very out of place. But the rest of the stuff about the art is really nice. It's just this sword I hate. And yeah, that is the end pages. And then it's just, you know, your typical book stuff. We got title page. We do have interesting chapter beginning pages. That's the acknowledgements, but the chapters ones are similar. Let me see if I can find one. Yeah, so we have nice designs in there, but other than that, I think that is kind of all of the design things to note in the book. We have pretty large words, pretty generous line height. I don't know why I forgot that word for a minute. And the book is, how many pages? I'm trying not to spoil it for myself because I'm trying to look for the number of pages but not read the words. All right, the book is 381 pages, so it's pretty short. I think I can read it in a day or two depending on how enthralled I am, but I have heard good things about this one, so I am excited to get started. Now here's a question for you guys. When you read hardbacks, are you a dust jacket on or off type of person? I'm a dust jacket on person. Partially, I just like when I have my hands on like this kind, like a paper, I just feel like the oils and stuff in your hands are gonna get on it and they leave disfigurations, and then I hate that. And also, I like to use the flaps as a bookmark sometimes. So I'm a dust jacket on kind of girl. Let me know in the comments if you were a dust jacket on or off reader. But yeah, let's go ahead and get my chairs, find some annotation supplies, and also probably a coffee, and then we will get started on The Sunlit Man. inside? Maybe? Alright, I'm on page 52, so it's just the end of chapter 6. And I came inside because they are doing renovations on the house across the street, and they just keep setting off the fire alarm. I don't know what the hell they're doing, but they keep setting it off, so it's very annoying to listen to. So I've come back inside, and yeah, I thought I would give a quick update on my thoughts. So far, really enjoying it. It's a very similar writing style to the other secret projects, which makes sense. It's the same author, and I think 2 of the other ones are also in the same world, so, or maybe they all are. I don't really know. But yeah, that makes sense. I think the world building and the characterization are both setting up to be pretty interesting. We're following our main character, Nomad, and he arrives in this world, and he kind of has no idea where he is, and he seems to be, he's fleeing this group. They're called like the Night Patrol or something, and he's got this kind of mysterious past where he sort of somehow fell from like grace or whatever. You know, he used to be, seems like respected in society, and now he's on the run being chased, but we don't know why. So I think what we're going to get throughout the book is him sort of discovering the culture and everything that's like going on in this world. He's already somehow managed to fall in with like a rebel group kind of thing, so I think he's going to end up helping them, and along the way, as he helps them deal with whatever's going on in their world, he's going to recover some of his previous self. Oops, I just lost my page. And some of his previous honor or whatever, and defeat this torment thing that is, he seems to have this like affliction, they're calling it a torment, where he like can't attack anything, which is interesting. So we shall see how that plays out. But I think I'm gonna go make some lunch now because it's like 11:45-ish, and I'm hungry. And I'll probably read a bit more as I go. I've made a couple of little, you can't really see, I've made a couple of little tabs, you can kind of see from there. Unfortunately, I didn't really have the colors that I would have liked. I wanted like more, you know, fiery reds and yellows, but I think they didn't really have a lot in my pack, and the ones that were there I had used. So I went with these colors. I've got one for world building, pointless characterization, other, and then this one I'm not sure what it's going to be yet. I tend to leave like an empty one in case as I'm reading it something that I want to keep track of comes up. So I haven't decided what that's going to be yet, but yeah, like I said, I'm gonna make lunch, and then I might potentially go sit in the park to do some more reading, just because my front porch, while comfortable, is still very shaded at this time of day, so I'm not getting the sunlight that I'm craving. So yeah, I will meet back up with you later, but so far, so good. It's quite a bit later. I'm up to page 228 of Sunlit Man. So I have like 125, 150, I forget how many pages exactly this book was. But I have like, let's say like a third-ish to go. And I've continued to really enjoy it. I will say that it is really focused on just our main character and then his relationship with the little kind of like sprite, spren, I think they call him, thing that is sort of alive, sort of not, lives in his head as like a voice. But we don't get a ton from the supporting characters. They're very on the peripheral, not like super developed. I think they're interesting, but yeah, like I said, we don't get a ton of them, which I think could be interesting. But our main character is very unique, and we've gotten quite a few little glimpses of his before life and how that got him to here. And yeah, a new sort of challenge has entered the scene. The thing that he arrived at this planet fleeing has made an appearance, so the stakes have gone up. I'm currently in the middle of quite a tense scene. I do think that Sanderson writes action and stakes pretty well. I do think some of the things he does, the choices he makes, aren't my favorite, like specifically in terms of names. Like it leans a little bit into the like kind of more like absurdist humor, where one character's name in this is Jeffrey, and I don't know, I'm not sure about it. I'm not sold on it, but I think that is the main critique at the moment. I'll have to, oh hi Gemma, review my thoughts as a whole once I've finished. But yeah, I think I'm going to read for a bit longer, and then we shall see. Alright, I'm down to just about the end now. I'm just in chapter 51, so there's like 12-ish pages remaining. And I have to say I'm extremely invested at this point, which is pretty impressive for such a short book. But yeah, I am very excited to read the last little bit, so I thought we could do it live together. Well, not that live. Obviously I'm going to cut it down, but yeah, join me for the end of The Sunlit Man. Alright, so I just finished Sunlit Man, and I really enjoyed the ending. I think it wrapped everything up in a way that was satisfying and made sense for the characters, the world building, Gemma, and the events that were generally happening. So I loved that. And yeah, I'm definitely more excited now after having finished this one, which according to his little blurb in the back is more directly related to the other events in the Cosmere than the other secret projects that were more tangentially linked. Apparently the events, or not specifically the events, but like the character in this book is actually relevant to some of the other stuff. So yeah, I'm very excited to read some of the other books in his main series now, having read this. I'm going to take some time now to sort of think about it, think about what my general thoughts are going to be, as well as my rating, and then we will reconvene to discuss my in-depth thoughts. Alright friends, welcome to the review portion of today's video. I'm going to be reading my notes off of my phone, please forgive me, but I wanted to make sure I had all my thoughts down and somewhat cohesive, but I'm also really bad at remembering what I wrote, so in order to make sure that I stay on track and say everything that I wanted to say, I'll be checking up my notes. So yeah, Sunlit Man, what are my thoughts? So my final rating was 4.5 out of 5 stars. Out of all of the secret projects so far, this is of course the last one. This is the one that is integrated the most into Sanderson's larger Cosmere, which I have not read, by the way, but there are references to larger plots within this book, and I read his little like afterword, and he talks about how it is more interrelated into the main series than the other more standalone type ones. And I will say that because of this, out of the secret projects, this is probably the most difficult to read and get into if you haven't read any of his other works, but I still did it and I really enjoyed it. He does eventually like explain most of the elements that you might be a bit confused on at the beginning, and honestly I kind of liked reading it very sort of like in the dark, because when you understand everything from the start, I think you kind of don't get to enjoy the little fun things to discover because you already sort of know what they are. And now I'm sure that's also a good way to read it, but I really enjoyed this, what I would call, and I get this term from UI design, but I think it's still applicable here. He uses what I would call, as I said, progressive disclosure. So he gives you a piece of the answer, but it's not like all of it at once. So you have to keep going, keep reading to discover all of the little elements that add together to make the cohesive story, which I really enjoyed. It kept me reading, kept me interested throughout. And throughout the secret projects, I would say that Sanderson's biggest strength has been world building, and I definitely think that has continued in this project. We have a world that's kind of unlike any other that I've ever really seen, where the sunlight is deadly to touch, so the entire population of the world has to be constantly on the move, staying ahead of the sunlight, which creates a really interesting and unique society and dynamic among the people who live on this world. Now, Sanderson takes a very sort of science-focused approach to world building, although like more fantastical than you might expect in sci-fi, but this really shows how like the lines between sci-fi and fantasy are really kind of blurry, because I think the Cosmere could kind of be in either. I think it straddles that fence in a way that definitely shows that these are not, they are their own separate things, but they're also, there can be a lot of overlap. That is to say though, that if you don't like the sort of science-like descriptions of world building and the sort of logical principles where everything is based on these like strict laws of how the magic and science work together, following rules, then this book specifically of all the secret projects might not be for you, as our main character is really interested in that kind of stuff. So we spend a lot of time in his head sort of thinking about how the world might work. Like if this does this, then how does this work? And this functions both as a character trait for our main character and also as a way for Sanderson to kind of explain his world to us, which I do like. I wouldn't say it's my absolute favorite way of learning about worlds, as it tends to lead to a lot of just like being in that character's head, as I said, which I don't think being in the character's head is bad, but I do like learning about the world through just like things that happen, which does happen in this as well. I'm not saying that it's only just our characters sitting around thinking about how the world works. That's not what it is at all, but it just does tend to lead to a lot of the character thinking and debating with themselves. But it is effective, and in this case, I think it makes sense with the characterization of our main character. In terms of characterization, how many times am I going to say that word? I feel like it's already been a lot. But I think the main character is quite well developed, although we don't learn like every element of his backstory, at least like not right away. We get hints and elements through sort of what he says and does, that he does have a complex backstory in life that has led him to where he is and why he does the stuff he does. Now, it is a pretty short book, around 360 pages, I think it was. So not all the side characters were very developed. They kind of focused more on a couple, which makes sense. So we have Ox, who is the spren that is like in Nomad's head, kind of. So he's one of the more important main characters. And then we do have Rebecca, but I don't want to say that she's super developed. I think the one that is more interesting and more explored is Elegy, who is her sister. I would say that Ox doesn't come off as super deep right away. He's more the sort of sarcastic sidekick kind of stereotype, but towards the end we see more of his own personality and him kind of making some of his own decisions, which I really liked. Elegy in particular I think is interesting because she has all her free will taken away, and then when she gets it back she has no memory of who she was before, and she instead finds herself fueled by the violent desires that have like kind of taken over since what has happened to her. And I think that her journey to become more than the violence that is left in her is really interesting, although it's short. You know, there's not a ton of time for him to really go into it and explore it a lot, which I think could have been really interesting, but I think with the time that he had, Sanderson did a really good job of, I don't know, making it sort of a gradual transition so that it makes sense. And you can see how she's learned some things, but Sanderson sort of leaves her future open for her to continue to develop. And that is one thing I like about how this book ended, is that like things are wrapped up, but you can still see how, and this is like something I've talked about before in other reviews, where like the author wraps things up but leaves it like so that you can see how the characters' lives continue after the book ends. Like it's not like the book ends and it feels like everything just stops and the characters' lives stop here, but you can see how he's left some elements open for them, some challenges that they're going to have to deal with in the future, so that it feels like the story goes on beyond the end of the book, but it's wrapped up in a way that all of the things that you needed to know to be satisfied have been concluded. Now, this does have a little bit of the sort of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy-esque humor in it. Not much, it's mostly in the names. As I mentioned, we've had a character called Jeffrey, so if you are not really into that kind of humor, just like be aware that it is in there a little bit. Definitely not to like a huge extent, but it is sort of a little bit of like the flavor of the writing style, I guess I could say. From what I've seen of Sanderson in like the secret projects, it does tend to be something that he incorporates into most of his books. I don't know about the main series stuff, I will have to find out, but at least in the ones that I've read so far, it's been there, and I'll be honest, I'm not really sure how I feel about it, like how that tone matches the context of the stories. I'm not totally sure about it yet, so yeah, that's just something to be aware of. So why didn't it make the 5-star cut? One, as I mentioned, because I'm not 100% sold on Sanderson's writing style and tone. And two, because as much as I enjoyed this story and has inspired me to go ahead and read some more Sanderson, I don't think I'll really think about it a ton going forward. And I'm trying to be more discretionary with my 5 stars. I feel like I've sort of given them out maybe a bit too freely last year, so I would like to be more selective and give it to books that really stand out to me and that stick with me. And I just don't think that this is one of those books that's gonna really like linger in my mind and have me thinking about it down the line after I've read it. But I do think that it was really enjoyable overall, and I feel like it has good reread potential, so I'm happy to have it on my shelf. It's not on the shelf, it's downstairs. But yeah, that is The Sunlit Man. That's really everything I have to say about it. And I think I've rambled on enough in this video. So let me know in the comments if you read The Sunlit Man and what your thoughts on it were. But that is all I have time for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.